a big week last week. Let's maybe dissect the city manager fiasco. Can we call it that, the fiasco?
Call it whatever you want.
Well, it's just another one in a long series of Malibu hiring disasters. I mean,
So what happened, guys? Break it down. What happened?
Well, I didn't really pay attention until, that meeting where she showed up and her friend spoke on her behalf, and then everybody was like, oh, that could be good. And
That was
she
a
vanished.
couple of council meetings back, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
she seemed very competent, very pleasant, ticked all the right boxes, and yet it didn't happen. Malibu hired a firm, as we learned, to do this process. They went about it the right way, but somehow Malibu, we can't give away this $300,000 a year job. Nobody wants it. We've had competent city managers in the past, and we've driven them off, and apparently that word gets around that this is a very difficult environment to
Because
operate in.
what is the context, right? What is the history of city managers in the last 5 years? There was one during the Woolsey fire, and she got fired, and then Steve McClurry replaced her, and he was an interim who became permanent, and then the fires happened in the meantime.
So here's my understanding.
Joe, Tony.
And a lot of it's secondhand information because till recently I couldn't care less and didn't want to be involved in Malibu politics, but here I am.
Here we all are.
We're commentators.
Learning fast. Learning so much so fast. There was the city manager during Molsey and after through COVID was Reva Feldman, who I've heard from residents was accomplished and was getting a lot done, and people, or at least some portion of the town, was very happy with her. I think she got on the bad side of some, especially some on the council, for, I guess, the idea that Malibu was developing.
She was really pro-development.
Projects were getting approved, shopping centers were going in, that kind of thing. So she was driven off, and I think that's, at least in recent history, that's when the word started spreading around that community of city managers that Malibu's a tough place to work.
Yeah, well, because of that shopping center, that horrible shopping center down the street that nobody goes to ever, right? The one that's always packed full of people.
You've been sarcastic,
Huge
right?
success.
Yes, the beautiful one with the Whole Foods, but it was very contentious.
So you have a ping pong board.
And I also heard that she was very vocal during the meetings. She would shut out council members if they were derailing. So she was like a high, strong personality of manager
Right.
that we haven't seen in
Which,
the last
frankly,
4
we
years.
need.
That's what we need.
at
We need
this
now.
The
point.
problem is that half of the council members are not gonna like, depending on the
Just bring her
style.
back.
Well, what happened? I mean, coming back to this particular, I mean, she was named, like, there was a press release, but, right? There
Well,
was a
the
press
new
release.
one. So there was
The new one, yes.
The new one was her name, Rhonda, right?
Yeah.
And then they.
So press release, and she was introduced to everybody at the Malibu Business Roundtable. I was there.
Yeah,
we,
yeah, I
we
was
talked,
there too.
we said hello and things like that. And then it's the meeting where she was at the council meeting, and then all of a sudden,
But also the city,
She left that meeting early. Maybe she got wise that this sounds
But the
crazy.
city spent money on a consulting firm to do the due diligence and research and put this out, and then they missed something, or there was some.
Well,
I
there's
think
all
like
that rumor mongering by
rumor, there
that,
were rumors.
that lawyer guy who came in and just threw all these allegations.
I think it was
in
more
front
than
of
that.
Everybody.
I think
Which
it was
had to be more than
But
that, right?
the facts that we know was that her contract was not renewed in Palmdale.
But it
She
wasn't.
wasn't
there
fired.
was
No.
some pretty significant allegations following her
her
as well.
her contract was up for renewal. They chose not to renew it. I think there were allegations. There was something going on in the city, not necessarily Rhonda's doing, but there was a cloud of suspicion.
And the official release is that she withdrew her.
She withdrew her application. I think that was
So I think they announced it, but in typical Malibu fashion, nothing's officially done for like 6 weeks until they can be the council meeting and the official vote. So
Maybe
that's
she
what
took a
happened.
look around and said, "Screw it."
That's what I think. She left this meeting early when she saw.
When she saw dysfunctional.
All of us standing
She was
up.
like, "I don't want to deal with these loons," and she ran away.
She saw what you did with ULI and Richard, and she was like, I'm out.
These are some tough residents to deal with.
But
Wondering
again,
how to deal with
it goes back to this idea that this consulting firm, this headhunter firm, was hired to find us a candidate. We found one. We wanted to hire her, and we couldn't.
What do you do? I mean, if you guys, if we were counsel, what would you do? Would you give her, here are the options. You let the offer remain in place, press release and all, let's go, because we're in crisis, we need your general, right? You know, the second option is what they did is, no, you know, this is not gonna work. Let's
we're
not
not-
let it go up. And the third is, give it a little bit of a trial run and see if indeed these issues manifest. or
We
not.
don't have all
What
the
you do?
facts.
We don't,
We
but
don't
considering the
know.
extenuating circumstances of the fire rebuilds, bring anybody in.
I think they were afraid of a trial run and another.
But we have someone
turnover.
already.
Better to stick with Candace
Yeah,
and
but-
hire somebody for the long term. Here's what I would say. These weren't new allegations that came to light after they soft appointed her. They knew it in all their closed door meetings. They knew everything about her previous employer and the circumstances of her, not termination, but her
The
leaving.
renewal.
Yeah. So either stick with your guns and say, you know what, despite all that, we wanted to hire her, and defend her after that if need be, or don't hire her in the first place and wait for the next candidate.
Quickly, but what does that do to the branding of the city? Like
I think that
how hard is it gonna be to recruit somebody who's
I think in the
genuinely
city,
capable?
in the city manager community, it's going to make it even worse. Here goes Malibu again. But in terms of branding, I mean, I don't know how many people even know what a city manager is or how important the job is. It's a hard job.
Yeah.
Like think about who's involved here. City council, 5 of them, some of them with very strong personalities, and they're not afraid to speak their minds. A set of people who are at every single council meeting, and good for them, but they also, residents, they also speak their minds. And then a city staff that is apparently dysfunctional might be too strong of a word, but there's turmoil inside that building.
There's
And
fear,
has been
yeah.
for a long time. Fear, you know, the conflicts of personality. There's a lot going on. So we need a strong hand, but does the strong hand want to work for Malibu again?
Well, even without a Rhonda or a city manager, we were told in February this won't be as bad as Woolsey. Now here we are. It's worse.
That was a council meeting, right, on Monday,
Yeah.
where for the first time in 3 months, I add a slot.
Actually, let me speak.
Yeah, they actually, you know,
When you
wasn't
spoke.
without, you know, a bunch of back and forth before the meeting. But, you know, really, I was looking to share a couple of pieces of information. I mean, I thought a lot about how should we use the time, all the while thinking about how not to blow things up, which it might have happened anyway, and to not really go explosive on staff. But that was the key point. Is like, look, we keep seeing these numbers. You know, the Rebuild Center, there's a dashboard and things like that. Some think it's okay, some things it's fine, some things it's terrible. But what does it mean in the overall context? And what does it mean? You know, forget about comparing us with Los Angeles or anywhere else. What does it mean if we compared us with us? You know, from 6 or 7 years back. So I dug through the numbers, and the story that it was telling us wasn't very flattering at all. And there was a decision to be made: as should we go out and talk about it, or should we sort of keep it and try to work it behind the scenes or whatnot? So that was one. Clearly, you know, we saw the reaction. It wasn't what at least I was expecting.
Well, first of all, let's talk about what you said,
Yeah.
and then the reaction to it. So, if I may, what you said in kind of broad strokes was, here's the path we're on. And you didn't follow that line of thought because it's very negative, the projections of how long it'll take to rebuild. And you didn't want to alarm anybody or throw anybody under the bus, like you said. Council's reaction was very surprising to me because they had been saying for months, you know, there might be a resident who comes up and speaks a public comment about some issue. Well, why aren't we hearing this from Abe? I thought this is why we have Abe. Where's Abe? Right? The residents are supposed to go to Abe, and then Abe was supposed to bring any complaints to us if they needed fixing. Well, here you finally were, live and in the flesh, with time to speak, and they did not like what they heard.
Yeah.
It's as if they hadn't listened to anything that you'd communicated to their staff through meetings, which you've had, right? For the last 3 months, you had weekly meetings. It's like they didn't learn anything from what you had meetings about.
I mean, okay, so for the audience, what I ended up presenting was a comparison with Woolsey. And so the pace at which we were going, if we overlaid that on the Woolsey map, we were actually worse than what we were in Woolsey. Now, what I did not present was another simulation that is being ran out of Stanford. And that is presenting an even direr picture. Now, sure, the simulation has a bunch of assumptions and one can, criticize it all day long. And so we left that out of the picture.
But did it assume that the city manager would be hired and fired in a week?
No, but was it tracking like so far
It
in
was
the
tracking
simulation?
spot on. That's the disturbing part. It was tracking spot on. This guy
Over
made
8 months.
predictions of the planning approvals. So I thought that would be a moment where we are all kind of quiet and reflect in terms of what's going on, because the point that I was trying to make is this is not a staff problem. This is not singularly a council problem. This is not singularly a resident problem. I think we all have a role to play.
And what is the objective exactly? What is the overall objective of all of this? Why are we spending this energy on this?
Well, it's a policy issue, and we're trying to change policy and clarify policy.
Even further, like what is the big picture goal here?
Well, viva la revolution.
No.
Can you repeat?
He's putting words in your mouth.
No, but what do we want?
We
We
want
want
people to get back in their houses.
Faster and better. And
Yes.
Why they hated this reality so much? It was the messenger. It was the reality itself. Is that they take it personally, and it's like it feels like an attack to them.
I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
I think there was the defense mechanisms immediately sort of gone up. It's like, this is an attack on us. We don't need to hear this. What are you specifically saying? What the solutions are? And I think the numbers were so distracting that most folks didn't even look at the last slides, where in fact we were talking about solutions and the things that we need to do.
A lot of
just
people
lost
Distracted by truthful numbers. I mean, that's kind of
So
unsettling.
they took it as a personal attack.
All I can figure, because I've thought about this a lot too, trying to get into their heads. I think that everybody was very excited about your appointments, including all of the council. Residents were excited because we thought we'd have a seat at the table, a voice to help us, and to find common ground on some issues. Whereas usually the residents are powerless, the city has all the power. Well, maybe through communication and negotiation, there can be a middle ground. I think the council was excited because they wanted to do something. I think their hearts were in the right place, and appointing somebody, who's not getting paid, who's volunteering all the time and energy, what a great solution.
And it's someone else that they can blame if it doesn't work out.
Maybe. I don't know. I'm not ready to go there yet.
Yeah.
But maybe for the past few months, there's been a hope and an assumption on their part that things were progressing behind the scenes. And when you get up there and you reveal that, with a few exceptions, they're not, and the work we're doing is still work, but it's not resulting in results yet. We're not seeing the approvals. It put it all back on their plate.
Well, so I just want to interject because you said they seemed to think that there'd be work going on behind the doors and there was progress being made. I think that was happening because of the tremendous efforts by Abe in working with the city staff, but they keep on hitting policy roadblocks, and that's what we're trying to do, is get rid of those policy roadblocks. And without that,
But I think there's
work
more to
through,
it. I mean, the
work doesn't go far.
we've spent a lot of time on the policy discussions, and yet there needs to be even more time that we need to spend on that. But that is step one of the process. That is the planning. Now, when we look at where we are tracking with planning approvals, yes, we are lagging Woolsey, but we're still getting some. Like, we got some 50-odd planning approvals and a bunch of them in the hopper. In the overall life cycle of the permit, that's tracking about 40 days or so right now, right? But the overall permit is taking 6 to 7 months, best case, if you're on it. So you got 40 days, which is 1 month. You got, let's just say, 10% of the process, but that has consumed over 90% of our focus, our airtime. There's a big step two, which everybody seems to think that's just construction stuff. It's black and white construction stuff. There is nothing we can do about it. Either you put a plan in place that is good or not, but that's not the case. That's where things are falling apart, and we're seeing a major gap. So that's what I was trying to draw everyone's attention to.
Well, and that's also policy. So the city council, it seems, has blinders on. They've been focused on the planning policy and totally ignoring the building department policy. They have policies and procedures they follow. All that 7 months of work that design engineers are doing is dictated by MMC and policy. And if the policy gets cut away, then it'll just be MMC, and maybe that 7 months gets reduced to 4 months. That's all I was trying to say.
If these aren't state building code requirements and they're not, if they're Malibu specific, then it's a policy decision.
It's a policy. So what I believe the council has discretion on in terms of policies to determine what they consider a new structure.
And to uphold the law as it stands.
That's the concept here. Is a new seawall or a different seawall than the one that you had before, more than 10%, are we considering that a rebuild or is a new structure?
Or is it fixing the seawall that was already there? Because you're not modifying.
But is the
that-
difference from PV to RDP? The RDP requires a wave uprush.
And it is so insane to even talk about this because we have a PD process that is not working. And to think that we would want to narrow the net of who could be included in that and push more people into the RDP process that takes longer.
Why is
that's-
PV process not working?
Because we've issued 2 permits in April.
Well, okay. So it's not being as fast as we want, but it works very slowly, but it works, right?
I'd like to go back to
by design and slow.
Yeah.
I'd like to go back to Woolsey.
Oh,
What happened in Woolsey, you know better than probably any of us, but this is what I've heard, is things were moving pretty quickly at first. They had the right idea. And then it's the opinion of council and maybe some staff that people started getting away with too much in the beginning parts of Woolsey. And now when we talk about how they've fixed things to make things work better this time, maybe in their mind they have fixed things because it's slower and harder to build than it was during Woolsey. And I believe that a couple of council members don't believe that the majority of us will rebuild. And they're okay with that. I think that they would rather lose 70% of the fire survivors, just lose them, gone from Malibu forever, than allow a 1% loosening of the Malibu planning and building requirements. They'd rather their future Malibu be precisely to their specifications than that future Malibu involve any of us who are from the previous Malibu. But here's the problem. Even if I could say, remove myself from this, that they don't care if I'm here or not, they don't care if your family comes back, they still need those houses rebuilt. So whether it's me rebuilding in the PV process or I sell the lot and that person rebuilds in the PV process, that PV process needs to work because Malibu's going to run out of money.
you said a lot of things just now. You said why do they need to rebuild those houses?
For property, that's what let me finish
The
that.
council?
Yes.
Because
Because
feed the coffers of the city moving
You
forward.
think
The low-
700 homes is gonna?
That's significant.
Yeah.
Well, right now we are, Doug said it, we were at 15 million whole.
But this is because of the
Relative to-
fire itself and the
Sure,
commercial
sure.
laws
Well,
and all that.
but,
in the
big
last
picture.
decade, Malibu's population has been decreasing precipitously.
And they had
especially
$100 million
primary
in the bank.
residents.
They were good with money last year until the fire. Yeah.
That's true.
There's something
Businesses are struggling. It's hard to fill retail space. And the schools are struggling. Doesn't have enough enrollment. So there are community-wide issues. I think, everybody should, and the council should be supporting the rehabilitation of Malibu. And if it's not me, it's not Darren's family, somebody needs to get in there.
And somebody will. I mean, I think everybody understands that, just like the Mowbray brothers dropped 100 million, there are plenty of people out there. This is the nicest place on the planet, or one of the
They're not
nicest
that
places
worried
on the planet.
that they're.
You get your planning approval, it's a hurrah celebration, and okay, we're done. And then you get confronted with the detail after detail after detail. And stuff gets sent out to the consultants here and there and so on and so forth. And I don't know, honestly, how many other council members are actually aware of the nuts and bolts of what is really stopping people.
Well, from my perspective, it seems like the rebuild process, the PV part one was made as simple as possible. But then part two, the building safety part, is the exact same as any other building project in Malibu minus the coastal commission.
That's right.
all.
But there's no
That's
coastal
right.
commission in the builder and
right.
safety.
And
So
that's the
that's
point that I was
the
trying to
whole
make.
thing. Well, most people thought that it was all going to be easier, and it wasn't. It was really just that one
I mean, if you
component.
think about
was
it, in the
taken
grand
out.
scheme of things, like if you take a pure timeline view of it, it's 10% of the process significantly easier, but the remaining 90%
It's the same
is it'll
as
stay
But one
as
question
always was.
to you. I know that is your pet peeve, this part two of the process, which deals with making sure that the minimum code standards have been implemented. That doesn't change from
Well, it
another
does.
step.
Well, it does
So
at the
how do
sense.
we-
Well, okay. So how do we reconcile with that? Okay, so let's talk about a practical example. Let's say someone, a geologist that the homeowner has hired, is recommending certain things. Let's just get specific here, right? The geologist is recommending 4 feet of removal and recompaction at 90%. Now, the city geologist might say, no, I want to go all the way to the fill and go 8 feet, removal and recompaction. It has
Based on-
changes based on, well, historically it's all fill, so you can't put new fill on top of old fill and things like that. But that's not necessarily code.
It's the conservative interpretation.
It's the conservative interpretation.
How
of
do
it.
we-
Because especially now, the homeowner geologist would argue that, well, but the home has stood here for 50 years, hasn't moved. That fill has been compacted like hell. You don't have to worry about it. And when we are churning the stuff, we are going to play with the top, 2-3 feet anyway, which will compact down. Ultimately, we get to an agreement of some sort or not. But this conversation is excruciating.
So let's help the council members. How can we define this change in approach?
They direct Candace to direct Yolanda to tell each of her departments to give her a list of how they can go faster. How can we cut red tape? How can we go faster? Doesn't mean we're going to do everything on that list. Doesn't mean we're going to do
We're
it.
going to respond to
I
that.
think-
We
I
don't
think
have
it's a- I
enough
think it's a
submissions.
simple ask.
We don't have enough submissions. We are like doing like the.
I
This
think
is
it's
how a company would do it. If your company needed to cut costs, the CEO would ask each department,
Yeah.
tell me how your department can cut costs.
Yeah.
And then they pick and choose what to do.
Yeah, just make the list. They have
I
to
think
make the
and
list.
that's what I've been asking each of the council members to request from staff is like, put out a request asking for each department to cut steps by 50% and produce the cons, cut the administrative steps by 50%, see what you can or cannot cut. There may be some cons, there may be some downside, but let's hear it.
And
Okay.
by the way,
This is good.
It's not fantasy
Let's
land.
analyze
We're not waving our magic wands. Los Angeles is doing it.
But okay, so now we have to deal with the personalities, the fear, the egos.
Doesn't
right?
matter, it's a
So,
building department.
Let's
That's
be
always there.
realistic. We don't want to hurt any egos, right? From
That's
any
the
department.
problem.
So if
Yeah.
we ask them to tell us, how could you do this faster? Why didn't they do it faster earlier? It's
Well,
gonna be a
I think
feeling
that's-
of
Because
we're
they're
doing our
pros and
best.
cons, just like Abe says. That's why they didn't.
I know, but I think you're making a good point is that there is a chance that someone could end up looking really foolish. Right? I mean, this was a catastrophe of this kind, and 8 months have passed, and these were low-hanging fruits that could have been picked and haven't been picked yet.
Well,
So how do we do it so they don't feel that
Better
we're
to start
threatening them? Like,
We're helping them.
but how do we do it so nobody?
Because we're not
think
saying
punch
geo's
them.
the problem. We're not saying coastal's the problem. We're not saying environmental health. It's system wide. Let's all join together. Let's make this process better. It should have been done in January.
And the Baker Tilly report thing, wasn't it mentioned in something like that? And why wasn't it
It
implemented?
has been mentioned, but it hasn't been implemented.
And I think the other fear is, well, God forbid this process actually gets super easy. Now what? Now how do you hold off the bad developers?
But this is only for the rebuild center.
Look, well, that's right.
key.
I mean, but then can you actually do it? Can you actually have a process that is only for like, and like for like was 10% rebuilds?
That's
and
what
like
they're
for the
saying.
others?
A broken building department should not be a part of your urban planning. That should not be a feature. Like if you want to restrict development, restrict it with clear codes, clear policies.
That's been Malibu's MO. I mean, the sewer line is another
it
where the
hasn't
jam
been
was. Like
worked. I
you
mean,
want to
there's-
hold sewer hostage, to negate development.
Yeah, but I mean, if that is their strategy, it hasn't worked in the last 10 to 15 years, considering all the crap that's getting built out in Malibu Park. Like, I'm sorry, but all
No,
that
no.
stuff is a little
Maybe it
ostentatious.
would have been a
They're
lot
gonna
more.
respond to you. Imagine if we hadn't
That's right.
interrupted these things. We would be like Newport right now. That's what they say. And I actually kind of agree.
Well, no, I think it just takes a strong planning code and a strong leader to say no. They're instead of saying no, they're deflecting and distracting with
But
this
maybe there's
complicated
reconciliation
process.
that
Just
you cannot
flat
get
out
there.
say no.
But maybe there's reconciliation that
there's a
you
code.
cannot get there by planning code. And then-
What happens is the people with deep pockets are the only ones patient enough to go through the process, and then regular homeowners
The natural selection of
squeezed
Malibu.
out. And so Malibu just
100%.
becomes a playland for developers who've mastered the art of working through the
Of
broken
time
system.
and money, like the root of everything is the code. The code is by design like this, and this is something that I heard from the staff, so that if the political climate goes one way, the code can be manipulated and used that way.
Yes.
If the political climate is another one, the same code works also that way.
Well, but then those separate climates can also change the code. There is no bulletproof way to ensure your version of Malibu is the Malibu we're going to get.
And if what you said is true, then right now the political climate is streamline it for the rebuild.
It is not.
It's for us.
It is not.
It is for me.
No, for you, but not for the
My
council.
political thing is streamline it for the rebuild.
The council
That's not
were
council.
elected.
I know, but
and just remember, the council members, they look, at the end of the day, they look at who votes. The decision that they make, are they going to give them votes or remove votes?
Well, they need to realize that, let's call them the slow growth voting bloc, who put them into their positions on
In
city
the last
council.
election.
Yeah. They wouldn't necessarily vote the same way today. In fact, I'm sure they wouldn't. Because a lot of those slow growth people, A, lost their houses and need help, or B, realize how damaged Malibu's going to be. Like, let's say we have a baseline of 100%. You want slow growth to be 2% increase each year? Great. But we're at 70 now. That's our baseline. So we can't have slow growth. We got to have fast growth for 30%, and then we can go back to 100%.
That's what makes sense. The reality, though, is Western Malibu, Central Malibu, they are very silent right now.
Their businesses are going to go out.
They are
Schools
the
aren't
voter-
going to have
the
fun.
voter body, and those people, they don't want the rule cut out.
I think the businesses actually come back. You know, Western Malibu and beaches is starting to get full again, and
Oh, yeah.
so which is, I don't know. I mean, if
Summer,
it's, you know, I think that's also at some level reducing the urgency to act and do something dramatic, right? I mean, I kept wondering, or I keep wondering, what is preventing a council member from putting out a motion asking for staff to put a proposal asking for a 50% reduction in steps?
I think
Maybe
that-
we get 50%, maybe we get 15.
The problem-
Let's even make that attempt.
It's gonna sound as a joke, but it's not. Malibu is so beautiful. Like, you go out there, you drive on the PCH, you look at the ocean. It's like all this feeling of urgency and problem, it kind of gets diluted with
It does
this
fade
beauty.
away.
It's crazy. So, is there,
I think
big
that-
scheme of things?
There are two things that'll work in our favor.
Yeah.
Like, that does not work in our
No.
sort of lethargy of just like you're in heaven.
You're living in
It's
paradise.
crazy.
fine.
I
Look, and listen, you know, the city council members, they've got so much on their plate. I feel for them. I do, even when I disagree with them or I'm angry with them. They work, it's a full-time job, essentially. They get paid nothing. I mean, it's volunteer work. But I think there are two things, back to what I was saying, that can and will help us. One, a sense of shame and embarrassment.
yeah.
As-
To help us?
Hold on.
Okay.
And I think this is creeping up. It
Shame
wa-
is a strong, powerful
they're not
emotion.
They're,
for
they
driving
weren't only
change.
they weren't only mad at
Like
you.
that.
They weren't only mad at you when you came and spoke at the council. They were mad at the situation, and they feel on some level probably powerless to help it in a substantive way. But the pace at which Malibu's rebuilding is shocking, and it's going to become regional news. It's going to become national news. Like when LA, a notoriously slow place, is lapping you like this, it's crazy. So I think they will feel that pressure, the council I'm talking about. Also, they got a report from Richard Rojas in the last 2 months about the fiscal outlook. They know the cliff that's coming. They've got a 2-year buffer zone where the governor has averaged out property tax revenues. After that, they're in trouble. We've always, at least in recent memory, had a good war chest. And we're going to have it for a couple of years, but it's going to deplete fast. And I think some council members have to pay attention if they're not already.
And to your point, to your first point, at the moment, it felt like that presentation was a total bust. None of the points that I wanted to make landed. The next day was a completely different story. I had one-on-one exchanges with council members, and it felt like they really wanted to listen. And what can I do for you? I don't know. We'll see where it goes, but it felt like a different conversation. And I got phone calls and text messages from a bunch of folks I'd never heard in a while. Planning commissioners, etc. Said that, look, that truth needed to be told. Glad you did it. And it sounds like finally people are getting the direness of the situation that we are in. So for what it's worth, the next day was a set of different conversations. Let's see if we can ride the momentum.
So who needs to change, by the way, in your opinion?
Council
The
members?
council? No, the council.
That's
the
not
staff?
limbs.
Who are we asking them to change?
I think it's all hands on deck.
It's
and,
all hands
and I
on
don't,
deck.
I don't, yeah.
The mindset
I'm not-
needs to show.
I'm not talking about the lower level planners or anybody, kudos to them. They're doing their jobs, the leadership at City Hall, the council, interim city manager could help as well in this. I want to see somebody on council. If somebody's serious about this, I want them to have a conversation with somebody at the LA Building Department. What have they done differently? What concrete steps did they take? Invite them to a council meeting to give a presentation. Let's see if that happens. Because they want solutions, as if this is some impossible task, building faster. Somebody's doing it. They're right next door. Let's ask them what they've
That
done.
requires humility, right?
Well, it requires humility, but
Well,
it's also
yeah.
it's also more nuanced than that, in the sense that what's happening in LA, and I can speak to this because I have experience building before and after the fires, is there's a definite mantra of go easy on fire rebuilds. If it's not messing with the safety and integrity of the structure, go easy, right? Let it through. Don't spend time dotting I's, crossing the T's. Now that's a nuanced message. How do you sort of say that without saying it, right? And that's the culture shift. Now the question that arises is, can a culture shift happen with the same group of people that are providing guidance, that are actually providing the corrections? Look, I mean, we can take any number of examples.
I think it could if those instigators like Cotton Shires get thrown out of the mix. They keep pushing people in the reactionary side of things. Just get them out, and it'll start moving towards the progressive side of things.
LA City had the same group of people, and they had a mindset shift. How did that happen?
Yeah.
Who gave the directive? Let's find out.
think
I don't
it's
think
mayor
I don't
or
think it
that.
shows humility. So I agree, it was her, but she made a call to somebody who knew the departments, who knew the changes that could actually. Karen Bass wasn't telling Gio to go faster. Or, she didn't know the nuts and bolts.
I
But
mean, they probably had a top-down meeting of
Was a building
every
official.
department head, bring me a list of how you can make it faster, and then they picked the right ones to make things faster.
And by the way, I don't think it takes humility to make that phone call as a council member.
Yeah, it's
You're not
humility
expected to
to
be
make
an
that phone
expert
call.
on
Yeah.
everything. Call and ask for help. If you believe in the cause, call
That
and
means
ask
that
for
you're
help.
admitting that you were not doing a
I don't know. I don't
But
look
it's,
at
I think
I don't look at it
we're
that way.
past the point of admitting or not. I mean, the
I
numbers
think
are
it's,
in
I
our
think it's-
faces.
I think it's changing course. We've tried something. It's not like they sat on their hands. They did the rebuild center. They've been trying. Changing course based on the circumstances. Things aren't working.
I mean, the numbers obviously are very obvious, and it's not just the present day numbers. It's if you look at the pipeline, our pipeline is freaking dry. If they approved everything that was in the pipeline right now, even then our numbers wouldn't be good. That's the.
I say this all the time, Abe. If they approved 100 of 100, let's round it down. There's 100 applications, but give out 100 permits. You know how many applications are going to start rolling in?
That's the one,
There
yeah.
are people, all my neighbors, and I make these decisions. I go through these thought processes in my own head. It's not always about money. Bruce thinks nobody has insurance and nobody can rebuild. Well, there's 100 people that are ready to rebuild. They haven't gotten their permits. And there's a whole host of people, there's a lot of money on these beaches, that could rebuild if you showed them a path to doing it and they saw their neighbors doing it. They'd say, you know what? I don't want to leave. I don't want to leave my town.
Motivate.
I can spend 2 years doing this. I got the money. now I have the courage, let's go.
And that's the baseline status quo assumption. These people had their lives in Malibu. They were living in Malibu by choice. They weren't forced to live in Malibu. And of course, they'd rather be here than anywhere else because that's where they were.
They're still in
That's
the
what we
wait.
do.
But the council feels that because they put the rebuild center already, that's it. Job is done.
That's
It's all-
step one of
it's
100.
our fault for not going there.
No,
and
they're
doing
they're
it.
all smart people. They know it's not working as smoothly or
You
as well.
think that they don't recommend?
I think we have to continue to educate council on what aspects of the rebuild center are not, are not doing what it's supposed to be doing. I mean, in our pod with Bruce, he didn't appreciate that there's stuff that's going outside of the rebuild center for reviews. Like he didn't appreciate
But that's a
how much of a
consultant thing,
burden
yeah.
that consultants are adding to the process.
It's just it's magical thinking to think, leasing a space and bringing all the same problems into it is going to fix anything. I haven't gotten to the rebuild center once. I'm in the process.
Well, it
I don't
would make
I don't
up
need to go to the
on,
rebuild center.
Broken system.
I hire an
Not to
architect.
take photos or record anything when you go.
No, they don't want you to refer to an
The
architect.
rebuild center at the moment is putting lipstick on pig. Yes, it looks pretty. I mean, the lipstick looks nice when you walk in there. They're very cordial and polite and things like that. But the step 2 of the process still so broken. I want to go back to, Darren, what you were saying about the consultants. That was the second day of the council meeting where we spent how many hours? 7 hours, 8 hours? 7-8 hour meeting. And the last hour was sort of taken by this wave uprush conversation. So share a little bit more about that. I mean, we obviously went through a number of different topics, so we'll recap that in a second, but let's begin with the end of that last.
Well, from my perspective, it seemed like this third-party consulting engineering firm, who should not be speaking in the manner in which they spoke, was talking about how everybody on the beach should need a wave uprush study for the purposes of protecting their AOWTS, assuming we're all putting in AOWTS.
So that's the problem, the assumption, right?
Yeah, they
Okay.
made that assumption, and somebody spoke and said that the California State Water Resources Control Board also made that assumption. This person doesn't work for the state, but she's speaking for the state, and that's way out of bounds. That's not her job to speak for the state. And so I want to know what the state really thinks, because the LAMP says one thing. I'm planning on adhering to the LAMP. I'm planning on not putting in a seawall. I'm planning on not destroying the beach in East Malibu. And I'm planning on rebuilding a house that has the exact same plumbing fixture as the house that burned down. So I'm not in the category of somebody who needs a wave uprush report. So the fact that they're debating whether or not I need one just as a policy move is ridiculous. I'm
Can
not
we
gonna
break it
hire
down?
a coastal engineer
for the
to
people who are
waste my
listening to
time.
us,
Yeah,
explain basics.
So there,
and I
so,
can do it too.
There's a couple things at play here. The level we build our houses at, and the level theoretically we build our septic tank, and the protective device, the seawall that protects that tank. So the FEMA height allegedly tells us the height we're starting our houses at, and that's higher than it used to be.
And it's prescribed by the federal government.
Yeah, and every state Hawaii uses it, the Gulf Coast, Florida. It changes, depending geographically where you are, but it's the level. In order to get flood insurance from FEMA, you have to build your house.
So then you're now next level of complication.
So then there's a separate study that Malibu requires called a wave uprush study or a wave action report. They're used interchangeably, but basically you bring an engineer on site and they stand there and they measure the waves, how they're coming up. And
They just get a tan, drink some beers, and take some measurements.
But the idea
That's not
is,
what they
Is it
do.
really what it is?
no, it's site specific. They'll be able to project how high the waves might go at any time, because you wouldn't want a wave to go so high that it would damage your septic tank.
And it takes into account what?
the 100-year flood.
There you go. So that because the ocean, the
But every
global
civil
warming.
engineer in the world knows the 100-year
Okay,
flood.
but it's
rules.
important for the people listening to us. So there's two set of requirements. One that is FEMA, that is less restrictive. One that is more restrictive, that is wave uprush.
What
FEMA
about-
is for the house. Wave uprush is only for
The
seawalls.
shoreline protection device. Yeah.
They don't want the wave uprush to be required, period.
I don't want it to be required because for my particular family's property, we don't need a wave uprush study because FEMA BFE is so far.
From
I'm
the
throwing
limited-
$15,000 away for that engineer.
So basically,
More than that. So let me enumerate a couple of the cons. One is if your house has to go higher, every single foot higher you have to build, the costs go up exponentially because your caissons have to go that much higher. These
more
huge,
bolts,
expensive things. And your seawall potentially has to go higher. The other big problem is that almost all the houses on the beach in the burn zone are going to have to be built higher, destroying views for passersby and also any neighbors on the land side. You do not want to introduce a piece of data that could push you even higher than the FEMA required level.
I'm okay with the studies is the thing. What I'm not okay with is a consulting geologist or geotechnical engineer speaking for the state when she doesn't have the authority to, and pushing an AOWS upgrade, which is in conflict with the law as it's written. So I don't want to put in an AOWS. The law says I don't have to.
So let's go to
I don't
that.
want a seawall. I'll hire a coastal engineer.
Why don't we go to
but
that?
I'm not building a seawall, so it's all.
You hit on the key point because we haven't discussed how many from these 320 homes, how many have the septics destroyed? We are not talking about this. How many? 50%?
Less.
Probably like
From our anecdotal data.
18%.
Do we have data for? Let's say 30%. Those 30% homes,
They have to.
they need a wave uprush,
Okay.
and they need it now.
No,
Okay,
planning.
but that should
They
be
need
the
to
rule.
know that.
Actually,
If
they
you
don't.
need,
I know. Okay,
if
explain
you
me why
need
not.
to have an AOWTS, then yes, you need a wave
Because you
uprush.
need a seawall.
But I don't, so I don't.
Okay,
need a wave
so you-
uprush.
but
so
let-
make that policy.
But Darren, you have your own case, and I feel bad for you, but we have to think about all the
So,
residents.
so
Okay.
I don't want to get into the whole sewer thing again, but
I mean, the sewer's going to make this all
Okay, if the sewer, there you go. Okay.
we do not want more seawalls on the beach.
I agree.
The public doesn't, the environment doesn't, scientists don't. Seawalls are bad. You know, they have repercussions. They're essential sometimes, but if we can avoid putting them in, we should. On La Costa and Carbon Beach, especially, seawalls were minimal, and a lot of parcels didn't have them at all. We want to minimize the number of seawalls that we have to put in. So we don't know if the sewer is going to happen, but that would eliminate the need for
So
seawalls.
let's
today.
pretend it's not happening.
But even if it's not happening, then yes, those 18% of people need to get away from
Okay.
That's your number, but I don't think that's far. Maybe a
It's
quarter.
50%.
Maybe it's
no,
not.
that's not. It's not.
Nobody knows is the answer.
We took polls of our beaches, and a lot of people didn't share the information. But it's the tanks were untouched in a lot of cases. You know, they're 8 feet
Tanks
underground.
and seawalls.
And seepage pits.
And we have less information about the seawalls because Eli Jr. wasn't required to go out to every parcel and
disclose.
cap it and pump it and inspect it. So maybe that information will come later. But
I mean, he has been required to do that.
those
But
wave
this-
uprush studies have always been in the code, so I don't think anybody's arguing. I mean, you might, but that we should try to get rid of that, because if it comes to that, it's $15,000 expense, and you got to build a seawall and you got to put your tank in. Okay, that tells you where to put it. I want to go back to what you're saying, that why wouldn't I want to build my house higher? Well, there's nuance here. Do I believe in 100 years, if I build my house at a lower level, a wave at some point is going to get to my second floor, maybe cause some damage? Yeah, I think there's a possibility. But, you know, I was living on the sand, essentially. My master bedroom was a foot above the sand. That's never coming back. But there's a lot of houses like that left standing. You know,
They're not being forced to jack them up.
Right. These are things you live with as a beach owner. And by the way, you have flood insurance. Like, you know, I would rather, and also even Mike Phipps at this meeting, who was the consulting geologist, who was recommending
Better call Saul.
under questioning.
I didn't see it.
Under questioning, he wasn't able to defend his science very much, and he admitted that there's a lot of projection going on. The projections change all the time.
Yeah.
It's guesswork, and I believe in climate change. I believe in rising oceans, but to make building decisions based on very, very flimsy and contradictory science.
I hear what you guys saying is that, look, I mean, there is science to it, but there is also this thing of how far do we want to take it. As residents, we have lived here, we understand that occasionally there may be an off chance that water might hit our homes, and we're prepared for it.
And look, I should put motorized storm shutters on every single window I'm rebuilding to keep the fires out. I'm not going to do that.
Why not?
It's ugly AF.
You can hide it. You just put
these
it in
are-
a thick soft.
These
The
are
wave
choices.
Recently, I asked this question to Tyler. Hey, Tyler, if I submit a pitch from lot for planning approval, do I need to show my septic and my seawalls? And he said, no, you don't need it for your planning approval.
But you need it for the
And
building.
I'm all
But you're
with
for the
it.
developer, and maybe once you do the wave uprush on your sewer, you realize that you need to raise your whole thing and change your plans. Are you willing to take that risk? Up to the owner.
It's up to the owner. Yeah,
Exactly.
it's a
So
risk.
that's the one little thing that we were voting. Is just, do we need it for planning or not? The question that if you need it at the end of the project, I am sorry, if you need a new septic, you are gonna need a wave uprush.
Of course.
The question
If
is,
you need a new
do you
septic.
need a new septic?
We still have so many problems in phase one, and that's what gets people
Agree with that.
motivated and gets them into the
Yeah.
system and gets them in the mindset of I'm rebuilding. The planning stage, I asked you once, how long should planning take?
Planning should be 20 minutes.
Yeah. I'm 6 weeks in and nothing's
Actually,
happened. Okay.
Not even 1 second. It should be you upload and process.
Well, that's if the Archistar dream
In
happens.
5 years.
Prior to the
I think my
Archistar
point
dream,
is-
it's gonna
my
be a
point is
person,
that
it's
there
gonna
is
be 20 hours.
There is a lot of work left on step one, on the planning process, but there is also a lot of attention on that. Like the fact that we are discussing the fact that this was on the agenda for a council meeting, sure, we would like to have more decision, more clarity on a number of different things. And there has been clarity on a few different things already. But the phase two of it, zero.
You're right.
But overall, I thought the morning started well, where they were, they laid out pretty well that, look, this is how many minutes we have per topic. Of course, we didn't adhere to it, but I think that sort of set the tempo. And I thought the first half of the day was, reasonably productive. The second half, we got into some interesting conversation.
they went for the easy stuff first.
They went
which
to
is
the
probably
easy step
smart.
first, which is probably, get some out of the way.
I agree it was a productive day. So I'm glad it was scheduled. I'm glad it got done. It feels like we need so many more of them.
Did
And Marianne did a
schedule
good
another
job.
meeting at the end? They did,
I
right?
believe so.
Repeat that.
Did they schedule the next meeting?
But there was only one policy that we didn't talk. Which one was it? There was only one left, right? Or maybe I never.
I think,
So it's gonna work its way into a city council meeting? It might.
But also, like I asked this question: who picked these policies, and why don't we have more?
well, they had a slide on there. It's like, okay, these aren't going to be discussed today, like low flow and.
But what
a
if
couple other things.
there are gonna be more?
So there may be another workshop.
Well, what would make sense,
No,
and
no.
I hope it was the case, is that these were the issues constantly causing problems for the planning department. So they put them forward for a little clarity. We definitely have more issues to talk about. And I also agree Marianne did a really good job running that meeting. And we were a tough crowd at some point,
know.
We kept reopening
are.
public
Pain
comment.
in the ass.
What's your hyenas? Yeah, that's a tough.
Well, I know, no, but we truly we
Sure,
are
the city manager work.
we don't have any alternative.